Hello, boys and girls. Today I'm going to be talking about the 2015 NL Wildcard Game. Before I get into it, though, please remember to hit subscribe and then, follow me on social media if you can. And ring the bell. The bell keeps you notified on everything I post and when I post it, and it keeps you active on my feed. Remember, Timmy, Jimmy, Johnny, ring the bell. That's all I ask. But today we're going to be talking about the 2015 NL Wildcard Game. Now I know what you're thinking, that was 7 years ago. Why are we still talking about this? Because sadly I'm a Pirates fan. This is the only thing that keeps me going at night, is wondering what could have been if AJ Burnett was pitching that game instead of Garrett Cole. Now you may be saying to yourself, well, what do you mean? Garrett Cole, that was the ace of the franchise. That was the ace of that team that year. Didn't he win 19 games and lose only 8? And I'd say to you, yeah, but let's look at what Cole did that season. Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, he had an all-star type year. He was an all-star. He had the team lowest ERA out of the pitching core, out of the starting pitching core. And yeah, he was very dominant. But let's remember back onto the season. Like, take the stats out of it. Let's just remember, Cole was a hothead all year. I mean, there were so many times that season where I remember him arguing with umpires about calls, about balls and strikes. If he didn't get a right call, well, then he was throwing pitches that were absolute meatballs down the middle of the plate, and he'd give up runs or he'd give up hits, and then that would cause him to get frustrated, and that would cause him to get pulled early. There were so many games that year where, yeah, he could have went 7 innings plus, but his temper and his head got too much involved, and it forced him to get out of the games early. It forced him to give up a lot of runs that he shouldn't have. It forced him to, pitch for strikeouts instead of just pitching for an out, and then pitching because he's upset. And that was key in the wild card game. There were so many guys that got underneath his skin. There was so much pitching that got underneath his skin. So many calls that didn't go his way. I remember the fifth inning when when he gave up the home run to Schwarber. It was just couple pitches before that. The first one, it should have been a strike. It should have been. The second one, yeah, that was a ball, and then the third one, he gives up the home run. It was just that in the fifth inning. Like, everybody could see it. He was getting frustrated. He wasn't getting the calls that he wanted, that he got all year long up to this point, and he got frustrated, and we ended up losing that game. It wasn't, like, not really his fault. He should have never really been in that situation to begin with. It should have been either a veteran like Burnett, or it should have been a veteran like Burnett or Frankie, Francisco Leonardo. It should have been one of those guys instead of Cole, because at the time Cole really didn't have that in him. Like, when the right lights were on, he kind of didn't really show up. There was a lot of games that year where he was on ESPN, and I really couldn't find the stat, but I went off of a Twitter post where in that season, when Garrett Cole was on ESPN or TBS, he was combined 1-4, and he had an ERA of 8, and he was walking about I think they said 16 people, and he only had 10 strikeouts in those 5 games. It wasn't really his. He shouldn't have really been in that situation anyway. Like I said, it should have been a veteran guy. For me, it should have been Burnett. I mean, that season, he decided he was thinking about retirement anyway, and then his 2 sons, forced him to really get back and give Pittsburgh another shot because they loved the city. They loved the All Stars on that team, like Andrew McCutchen. They loved Neil Walker. They just loved that environment, and they really forced Burnett to come out, like, not come out of retirement, but stop thinking about it and go play for the Pirates. I remember that spring training, just watching them on Root Sports at the time, now AT&T Sportsnet, and that's all the broadcasters were saying was just like how dominant he looks. Like, that off season, he made a point too to not, if he was going to come back, he was going to work on his stamina and his control because he didn't want to be that guy who was going to be forced out or who was going to be forced to retire. Excuse me, halfway through the season because of pitching, because he's not pitching well. He made that very clear with the Pirates organization. He made that very clear with Francisco Cervelli, and Chris Stewart, and he made that very clear with Hurdle. And then he even went on the broadcast and said it, that I came back this season, to prove to myself that I do have it in me. That last year in Philadelphia was a mistake, him going 8-18. That was just a year, his off year. He didn't want to be remembered for that, and he decided to give Pittsburgh another chance. And I remember that when he did come back, the team was excited. They liked him. Everybody loved him in Pittsburgh. The city loved him. I remember his last start in Pittsburgh, and the Highmark building lit up with the Batman symbol, his symbol at the time. It takes a lot for a city to do that for you. You really have to make an impact, and I think Burnett did. And then it proved it with the team that they did. His last game of the season, or the last game of the season, they all chipped in and they bought him a car. They bought him a little, like a, oh, I don't know what the name of it is. It's like a motorcycle type car, and they put the custom P on it, and then I believe some of them signed it, and it was really cool. They all chipped in and did it. All 26 guys. They bought it. They custom painted it. Well, not themselves, but they paid somebody to do it. But it took a lot. Like that means a lot for a team to do that, especially when you left them the year before that. And then your last year, you tell everybody it's going to be your last season, and you don't really know that for sure, but for him it was. And for the team to do that, that really means they liked you and they appreciated you coming back. And then in my eyes too, I just think if it is his last game and if it is his last season, why not have him pitch? Because it would have been a Cinderella story that I'm sure the media would have loved to talk about instead of just them what they did do, just bash Cole and all that during the broadcast. But it would have been something. And I always think too, it's like they should have just started Burnett. And if Burnett got into shaky situations, or Burnett could have went 2 innings. Like here's my thing with Hurdle. He wasn't really smart that way with controlling the bullpen. Like he was good that way, but he just got either too confident in it or he didn't really know what he was doing. There were a lot of people that said he should have just either went with a starter, like a veteran starter, like Francisco Leonardo or AJ Burnett, to pitch 2 innings or 3 innings. And if they're rocky, well, then you put Cole in there. And that's what good managers did. That's what a lot of people did. That's what the Giants did. The Cubs did it. And they went on to win the World Series that year, the Cubs. And they did that. They had Jake Arrieta and a couple other starting pitchers that warming up in the bullpen no matter what. Because they knew that if they had to win, and if it was a win or go home game, that they would put everything on the line. They would have their starting pitcher. They'd have a guy out there that the manager trusts who knows they can go 6 innings or 3 innings, and then they have their elite starter go in there and close out the rest of the game. The Dodgers did it with Kershaw. The Giants did it with Bumgarner the year before, and it's just, why couldn't the Pirates have realized that, or why couldn't have Hurdle said that? I think the team would have got a big energy bust because of that. Not to say that Cole didn't really pitch with emotion that game, which he did. I'm just saying he pitched with the wrong emotion. He couldn't really get fired up after he was hot headed. He was just only caring about, just getting it done, getting the strikes called, getting the ball, like getting everything out. That's all he cared about. He was so frustrated that it got to him and he couldn't pitch the right way. But Burnett brought up the fiery side. There's a clip that's always online and always on about social media when he's playing against St. Louis. When he gets the strikeout, he just swears like he says "f on" or something like that. And it's that spark that he brought to the team, and the fan base loved him because of that. He knew how to get everybody going, and I think that he could have at least started or could have went 2 innings because that's what he did with the Yankees when he won in 2009. He pitched. He started a game, went 3 innings, and then went into relief. And then he did that throughout his playoff career with the Yankees and with the Marlins and all that. And I still think he could have done that in Pittsburgh. I don't know what would have been the big deal with that. I know Cole is your up and coming ace. I know that. But at the same time, don't you want to kind of protect him? Like have a learning curve for him? Like he could have came in there with relief and learned how to do that then. Not just throw him to the wolves on the biggest stage where there's 40,000 fans at PNC Park, plus probably what, I think it was 100,000 they said was watching on television, or like close to something. It wasn't like 100,000. I think it was like what, like 500 something thousand all over America watching the game. I just don't know why he didn't do that. And another reason why I think Burnett could have started that game is just because he chose to come back here. It takes a lot for you to really just say that, like, oh, I made a mistake the year before that and going somewhere for more money. Because that's what he did with the Phillies, and he basically said later in life, and then I don't think he said it that year, but I know he said it later in life, that he made the wrong decision in going to Philadelphia. He went there because it was more money. That's all he cared about. At that time, it's all he cared about. It took a lot for him to come back, kind of make a pay cut too, and then pitch the way he did that season. Yeah, the record doesn't really show it, but he was good that season. I remember the game before the All Star break against the Cardinals, where he had a shaky start, but he calmed himself down. That's one thing he knew how to do was calm himself down, and he pitched well. I remember he gave up the home run to Mark Reynolds, and then what was it? The inning after, 2 innings later, he hits the home run to tie up the game. It's just like that never say die attitude that he had that Cole kind of grew into. Like after he was traded out of Pittsburgh, Cole grew into that killer mentality. Not to say that he didn't have it in Pittsburgh, but it seemed like once he was out of here, he knew what he was doing. He knew he was going to be the best pitcher on this planet. And that's what he did. Now he got paid for it with the Yankees. But it's just, I wonder if Burnett starts, how this looks out. Because the next year you blow up the team, you trade Neil Walker, a face of the franchise, you trade Mark Melanson for known predator Felipe Vasquez. But I just like wonder if that doesn't happen. Do you see this team getting blown up in 3 years, where McCutcheon's gone, Cole's gone for three people that one of them turned out to be great and the other two didn't really turn out to be anything? Joe Musgrove and Colin Moran. You know, Musgrove ended up being traded away. Colin Moran ended up being, released, and now he's bouncing around in the minor leagues. It's just, I wonder if you truly see that happen. If we don't win that wild card game, I'm not saying we go on and win the World Series like the Cubs did. I just wonder if we go to St. Louis and if we make some noise there. I wonder if Bob Nutting puts some money into the team. I wonder if he realizes, oh, we were just a couple key pieces away. Like that's all we needed. So yeah, that's all I ask is just, who would you start? For me, I go with the veteran because he's pitched in that situation before. Uh, that's what I think. I think you go with Burnett because it's his last season. He's riding that momentum. He had a good start. Those last couple innings were good. He was very good. He was fired up. And I think he rode a lot of momentum into the season. I know he hyped up a lot of the Pirates players, and Francisco Leonardo talks about it, how he fired up the team in certain outings and all that. Like when they were down, when he gave up a couple runs, he knew how to fire up the team and keep them going and get run support. And once he got it, he turned it on. But yeah, I just think, who would you start? For me, I go with the veteran every time. Until Cole really proved it, which he did later in life. A couple years later, he's in the playoffs and he does very well. But it's just really, who would you start? I go with the veteran. 10 out of 10, I go with the veteran. All right, boys and girls, that's all I have to do today. Like I said, like and subscribe, follow for more.